This is Penny. Welcome to my studio. These are some of the things that can be made from the fabric that I've made in this video. A few weeks ago I was given this big box of ribbons. Because I'm not a ribbon person, my first thought was to take them to my thrift shop. And then I thought, no, let's keep them and try and make fabric out of them. So I'm going to experiment and see what happens. These are the ribbons that I selected from the box. I didn't use the solid ribbons. I only chose the transparent organza ones because I may want to burn them with a heat gun, so I wanted to play it safe. I put the ribbons down so that they were alongside each other and overlapped them by about 1/2 centimetre, which I pinned. And then I did a wavy stitch so that the stitch meandered over the overlapped area. If you look at these ribbons when they're on the roll, they look incredibly strong colours, but once you've unrolled them, they look quite pale. So I'm going to use 2 layers at least of ribbons. I ended up with a piece about 30 by 40 centimetres. These are the colours that I'm going to put across the back, and I'll also use a couple of the other colours that are in the first part as well. Here I've laid the other colours on the back. And look at how the colour changes. It's really now quite rich and dense, just with the 2 layers. The whole sheet looks quite bright. I'm using an ordinary sewing foot on there, and I'm just sort of pulling the fabric around all over the place and twisting it in order to get just a wandering stitch all over the sheet. Here you can see the whole sheet with the stitch. I'm going to have to go to the machine and change the foot because I want to do some free machine embroidery. Now I've used a purple cotton and I've done a random circular motion stitch all over in fact in half the fabric. I cut the piece in 2 because I decided that I didn't want the small circular stitch over the whole piece. The top half is what I'm going to call plain fabric, and the bottom half is the one with the circular stitch. Then I cut the bottom half into 2 pieces and decorated each one differently. At this stage my fabric pieces were getting smaller and smaller, but they were still big enough to make something out of. So the right hand one, I used a very tiny daisy stitch, and I used variegated pinks on one lot, and then I changed it to a variegated green and did the same stitch around the area, and you can see how it just wanders around the area. And I did this again with my normal foot on the machine. The second piece had a more delicate stitch. I used 2 or 3 different kinds of stitch in 2 or 3 different colours. And you can see that it's a lot more delicate than the first one. And this is probably the piece that I'm going to burn with the heat gun if I go ahead and do that. Here I cut 5 ovals and gathered the bottom of each one and then sewed them tightly in together. Then I added some stamens, and I covered a button in orangey crushed velvet and sewed that on for the centre. The second flower was done pretty much the same way, except because it was thicker, I cut teardrop shapes and gathered them in and sewed them in the centre just like the other flower. And I added pink stamens again and covered another button in a violet fabric. So it looks completely different, even though it started out as the same base fabric. This shows the delicately embroidered piece of fabric after it's been burnt or heated with a heat gun. These 2 beads are made with that fabric. The one on the top was made with it when it was burnt, and then it was laid onto a shiny yellow satiny fabric. The last flower was made with the plain fabric, 3 circles of it cut, and I gathered it slightly to make each one into a cone, and then I added some of the burnt fabric in the centre and then a green pearl sort of button. And yeah, I really like this one. I think it's the most colourful and the best one, but that's just my choice. And here's a pile of the things all thrown in together. And also there are some scrap fabrics in there. We had a little bit left over, but they make a colourful pile. I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you want to see more of my work, go to pennyema.cravado.com. I'll put that down under the video. So until next time, thanks for watching.